Welcome to the UI discussion. Welcome to the UI discussion party.
Now what the hell are you waiting for? What the hell are you waiting for? What the hell are you waiting for?
I am LT. As far as Black culture is concerned, I do think that we have a language. We have a way of being.
Sharon Doyle. I feel like I have no idea what that is.
Well, my name is Chavez Rosenthal. I believe that our cultural identity has been taken away from us.
Patrick Irvin. Yeah, you start talking about rock and roll, like that's identified as black in those times.
All right, so this is the UI experience. Show number 2. We're going to discuss Black culture today. Black culture and how do we define it? We have.
Well, my name is Chavez Rosenthal. I'm from Kankakee, Illinois.
And I'm Sharon Doyle. I'm from Dover, Delaware.
And I am LT, and I currently reside outside of Dallas, Texas.
And I am Patrick Irvin, and I currently live in Greenville, North Carolina.
Well, I'll kick it off. I personally would say that for anybody who has felt outside of Black culture, anyone who has felt like they weren't a part of Black culture might have a little bit of insight onto what Black culture is. I think that language defines a lot of any culture that you find around the world. So as far as Black culture is concerned, I do think that we have a language. We have a way of being. You can actually look and you can state this is a person who is a part of Black culture. So it is something that can be defined by how you speak, what you wear, how you look, the way you carry yourself. But it might still mean something different to every individual within it.
I would define it as anyone who's brown skinned or black. But
what she is saying is, what would be that tangible thing that connects all those brown and black people together? That would be culture.
That's what I'm getting ready to get to. It's hard to really identify with that because I feel like I have no idea what that is. What my culture is. I mean, I know that I'm supposed to perm my hair or put on a suit and tie, speak like conservative language in order to get a proper job, and I'm supposed to go to school and become well educated in order to fit into white society, but I have no idea what my own culture identity is. You know what I'm saying? What I'm trying to say?
And that's assimilation.
Right. I know what to do as far as that, but as far as what my own culture identity is, I would say I have no idea.
I believe that our cultural identity has been taken away from us. You know, when we are in the wilderness, so to speak, and while we are here, we are in search of a new culture that can define us as a people.
Right.
That's where the word Negro came from. It has derivations from Latin, which means that of the dead. When I say dead, I don't mean dead as in an event, but dead rather than something not functioning as it's supposed to be.
Right.
And that's why they use that to define us, because we have no culture.
Exactly.
It almost seems like that's the reason Alex Haley went to Africa and seek of his
roots. Yeah.
Right, because he was searching for his identity, and when I watched the picture Roots, I think it's the last one. I'm not sure what number it is or the title, but when he finally got to Africa and he met his people, it was like it was almost a weight lifted off his shoulder when he hugged the elder of the tribe because he had finally found himself. You know, I think a lot of us think that if we go back to Africa and can pinpoint the spot we come from, we can find our culture. But then you hear it said that some of us were here before the slaves was brought over from Africa. So could it be that our ancestors are right here? Our ancestry is right here in America, or is it over there? It's like we all screwed up. You know, you don't know where to begin.
Yeah.
And that was part of the plan. Yeah, that was part of the plan of conquering a people. If you can separate them from their culture and consistently separate them from a culture, you're taking away their identity. So for us, if you don't, I'm sorry, Shav, but if you don't assimilate to the dominant culture, then you're lost. That's that feeling of being lost.
Yeah. What I was gonna say is that it doesn't matter. It does matter, but as to the point of finding our culture, we shouldn't really distinct ourselves from the people who were here and the people who are in Africa. All we know is together now that we are lost, and that should be enough to link us together in order to form our own new culture, as you can say.
That's true.
Well, see, I agree with that. What you just said, because black culture is so diverse. I mean, even in Africa, you know, Africa isn't just one place with one group of people that all do the same thing. You know, there are hundreds of different cultures in Africa alone.
That's true.
So even in America, you know, no matter what city you go in or what state you might be in, the black people in that particular area have a different culture than those anywhere else. So it's real hard to pin down on a national level, you know, what black culture is. It's difficult. I mean, even, you know, spending some time up north in New York, the culture up there will get you in a fight down in the south.
Right, that's true.
And Sharon, since you mentioned roots, have you seen when they came, when they were all on the boat and none of them spoke the same language, and they said we are all from different cultures, but the men have said, brothers, people linked together with chains are brothers. That's what I'm saying. That's the concept that I'm bringing to us. Right. As a people, we shouldn't let that separate us. We all know we're black. We all know we're lost. So that should be enough to help us overcome the atrocities that happen to our people. Enough.
And that's what I was saying when I started off, is that I'll give a little bit of my background. I grew up in California, and in California, you can find different distinct cultures of black people in the Bay Area or in LA itself. And how it was coming up for me is there were specific things that let you know whether or not you were considered in the black culture. It was how you spoke. It was, if you spoke proper, you guys hear my voice and how I speak. My mother wouldn't allow us to use slang. My mother was like, you don't use slang. This is how we speak. You know, when you go out in the world, this is how you're going to speak. So then when I tried to identify with certain groups of, young black youth, they let me know I was not a part of that culture. You see what I'm saying? So we're, and I think we still are there now. I think we still do that to each other at times, where it's like, well, you identify a little too much with the dominant culture, so you're not a part of our culture.
Well,
I think that's with all groups.
Right.
Though. I mean, if you look at, because I was talking to a lady of Mexican descent, and she was telling me about Zimmerman, how although he's technically a Latino, they don't really accept him as one because he grew up with the benefits of white privilege. So he doesn't really identify with the Mexican.
I've heard that too from a couple of Spanish and Mexicans. Yeah. They say he's not Spanish, he's white.
Right.
They say Jewish is not white. Yeah. His dad was Jewish, white, whatever. He's not Mexican.
Yeah.
So being what we just discussed, then do we need to redefine it? Because the question is, how do we redefine it? Do we need to redefine it?
I don't even think we defined it yet. I think we're kind of in the midst of still trying to find it after all these years.
Identify it.
I mean, when you watch have you guys seen the Cosby Show, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You read my mind.
When people see those type of people, they don't think that is a true Black African American family. I mean, you have a doctor, you have a lawyer. They're both two parents households, wonderful kids growing up, speaking proper. Black people don't think that's a true family, and that's a huge problem.
Well, you know what? I think that's a Black family that has grown and assimilated itself into the dominant culture, which I think all of us as Black people.
How would that be assimilation, though?
Well, I mean, they have learned to speak properly, gotten the proper jobs, pretty much where the white culture accepts. Well, I wouldn't say they accept them, but you can almost they seem the same, but just different colors. One is white, one is Black, but they speak the same. They have good jobs, a big house.
But when you say assimilation, though, it has negative connotations that he's not Black anymore. He's with them. You know what I mean?
But that's what you're pointing out here is if a family, okay, not so much a family, but the standard of success in this country is based on what the dominant culture does. So to do what the dominant culture does is assimilation. However, the dominant culture got its culture from previous civilizations that we ascend from. Does that make sense?
Right.
It does make sense. For us, we are actually just going in the way of what we would do had we never had to assimilate to this white culture. But for us, it looks like trying to do what white people do when it's in actuality, it's them trying to do what we had already been doing.
Well, and you bring up a good point there, because especially when you start talking about the Cosbys, which, you look at the era that the Cosbys were in, that might have been, I forget for the life of me, and my mind just went blank, but the Cosbys was in the 80s and 90s, right?
Yeah,
somewhere back then,
around the 80s.
All right, so if the Cosbys were in the 80s, and it takes television a while to catch up to modern life and numerous things. The dominant culture or the dominant Black family at that time was a two-parent household. When the Cosbys was coming around, the dominant Black family at that time, maybe they weren't doctors and lawyers like the Cosbys, but there were two parents and they had jobs. Now it was starting to shift at that time into what we see now.
Yeah.
But
I think it was
the shift hasn't quite happened yet. So the question that has to be asked first is, how do we define culture?
Okay.
Like what is
I got
culture?
it right here. Culture has two meanings, and this will be anthropology, okay? The evolved human capacity to classify and represent experiences with symbols and to act imaginatively and creatively. The second is the distinct ways that people living differently classified and represented their experiences and acted creatively. So coming together, certain symbols within it, and how everybody defines those symbols that guide their culture. The main symbol being language. And that's a known symbol of any culture around the world would be language. That's your most basic symbol that you have, that you share amongst others.
But when you think, we kind of do have a language, but it's more of an assimilated language to the to American English, basically.
Right.
I mean, because Ebonics, you guys understand Ebonics, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That is in itself sort of a language. It's more, but it's
It's a
more.
dialect.
That's what I was gonna say.
Dialect.
They would say
Yeah,
the
it's
white
a dialect.
they would say that black people speak the majority of black people speak slang as opposed to speaking correct English.
But the problem with that is like Ebonics isn't slang. Ebonics is an actual standardized English language. Like slang, which you speak of, is more of something that has no consistency. You know what I mean? You see what I'm saying?
Yes. Yes.
But
And the fact that we can code switch tells you that we can go back and forth between two ways of communicating.
Yeah.
So the way we talk to each other and the way we talk to someone of another race, we can switch back and forth between what we need to say
But
and how we say it.
Shouldn't we, although we speak different dialects, shouldn't we all, black or white, strive for the correct language? So
what is correct though? Like you don't. That's not
right. What is correct? That's
this
it's
language,
right there.
The language right now, with the majority of white people you will see speak, that's not even correct English. It's correct according to them, but it's not correct. If you go to the England, the actual part, they don't speak it like this.
oh,
That's
True
funny,
statement.
too,
True statement.
because I have friends from my military days that have been to England. I even have friends that are from England, and they all say the same thing. Americans don't know English.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And over there, remember, you have in Britain, you have proper English there as well, because they can tell what bloodline you're from. They can tell what side of London you live on based on your accent. So it's anywhere you go, you know. But the main thing is, what are the symbols also in addition to language in the black culture? So we have language, our music, that connects us. I mean, you could, yeah. Yep.
Some would say the new rap that's out now. No, that's not. Like I was offended by Soul Plane. It's still
out there though.
But throw on an old school. Throw on some old school, and we can all. I don't care if you go from Dallas to Oakland to New York to wherever, you find a crowd of black people, and there's certain songs that if you throw those on, you're gonna get some fools dancing. So so definitely our music as a symbol.
But the question with that becomes, those same songs, would they be part of American culture as a whole, or are they specific to black culture? Because I can think of a number of songs in the black community that if you turn them on in a room full of white folk, they'll
start dancing.
They'll bust out too.
True.
But they will always still identify it. But they will still identify that as being a part of black culture. Music. They can never take Motown from us. They could never, ever take Motown, right? Like, that is not yours. The New Jack era, you can't have that. That's black. Like that's a part of black culture forever. Y'all can have rap, whatever. Y'all can partake of that. But the thing is there are certain key, distinct eras that belong within black culture, and they can partake and enjoy it all they want. Just like I go to a Mexican restaurant because I like the food of that culture.
Yeah,
you know?
That's true.
So,
but it's still their culture, though. We still want.
But are we being racist when we feel like that? Because they would say they have certain things that belong to them that we want to participate in. They feel like it's theirs, and we shouldn't participate in. I mean, they go to the extent that we wouldn't, but I mean, some of us probably would. But so if we.
I don't think it's necessarily racist. I don't think it's necessarily racist when you're trying to find a way to like identify yourself. I mean, if we can identify ourselves, when you think of music, no matter what kind of genre it is, if it's black culture, it's going to identify with black history.
Right.
And that's not to say that we can't share it with anybody else. It's just our history. That's a way of telling our story. That's not really racist to claim it.
And racism would be if you could use that culture, if you could use those means to control a group. We don't use our music to control. We don't. Now they might use our music to control us, but that's a whole other conversation. But you see what I'm saying? So no, it's not racism. It's just a part of culture and its identification.
We're not saying that just because you're white you can't listen to black music. So just throwing that in.
Right, yeah.
The only reason I say music is dicey is because it's so dependent on, like, the time. Like, if you went back to the 60s, 40s, 20s, whatever, and you start talking about rock and roll, like, that's identified as black in those times. That's black music. But if you think about rock and roll now, it's associated with white culture. Like, that's white people music. You know, if you go back even further, to classical music. If you go back a couple hundred years or so, you know, that's associated with black people. Like, that's black music. But now when we think about it, it's associated with white music. You know, you start thinking all these stuffy old white men in their white wigs, all stiff, high on whatever drug they was taking at the time in front of the keyboard.
A harpsichord. That's a harpsichord.
So is that because we've lowered our standards? If back in the day we were associated with classical music and things of that sort, now we're associated with the lowest of rap. Does that
No, we didn't do that. We did not do that. We did not. It was taken from us.
But look,
it was taken. This is the question of how do we redefine it? It's not even a redefinition. It's a reclaiming of what he just stated. People don't know that was attributed to us. If you don't know that rock and roll started Chuck Berry, you know, if you don't know that rock and roll was blues, they go hand in hand. If you don't know that, then you're going to think that rock and roll is white, is a part of white culture initially. This is why it's about the re-education.
But somewhere back in the days, let's say 30, 40, those black people back there, our great-great-great-grandparents and them, they had much less to live on, operate with than we do, financially, land-wise.
That's true.
And they kept their dignity and integrity up to a certain standard. Now it seems like we have much, much more, even though we don't have much as we want or much as we need or should have, but we have a lot more than they did back then. And it seemed like we have lowered ourselves to the lowest of standards.
Well, what's
that?
the difference?
I think that's
what's the difference. Oh, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was saying, what's the difference between our grandparents and what we have now? Do we have any leaders like they had? Do we have any common, obvious struggle like they had?
No, they killed them all off.
We have no unity like they have. So why do you think that we will lower our standards? We don't have anything to look up to. We don't have anything.
Well, let me throw this in there though. What about the fact that remember what we said about symbols, right? Symbol is what defines a culture, and you can use a symbol to control a culture. So our grandparents didn't have television like we do. Yeah, the explosion of the television and quick access to information and new symbols that could control a population. That you could take youth, you could give them this thing called rap music, and you could either give them conscious rap music or you could give them degrading rap music. And what were we given? What did we have, and then what were we given?
Hey, this one, I finally did get in. I wanted to chime in real quick. I think when you're talking about culture, I think it's hand in hand with history overall. And I think to kind of bring home what you all are saying as far as the different leadership in the different times in that particular era, is the missing link is the history. We're not communicating the history to our children while they're coming up. So of course they wouldn't know that we started classical music or blues or any of that thing, anything of that nature. So it's getting lost. And then
I would agree on that. We do a really bad job of passing down our history.
Same thing with tradition. It's like the tradition is getting lost as well. So when you talk about Mexican food and stuff like that, we're starting to lose even that aspect when you come to cuisine, so to speak. So I think it's more so a history issue as opposed to one of the other identifying points.
Right.
Well,
right.
I agree with that. I think there's a lot of, I think, because Dr. Clark Anderson does a real good spiel about comparing what we had back then to what we have nowadays on an economic level. And economically, although we haven't moved because we're still in the same percentage, I think we've gotten worse. But morally, I think we've just fallen apart. Back then, everything, we had pride in our history. We had pride in being black. We had pride in where we came from. And all of that was instilled. Every father was an honorable leader of his household. He was respected in the community and by the people in his household. And that at that time, I know with my grandparents, my grandfather frequently says the most important man he ever met in his life was his father. And before his father died, hearing his father saying the same thing about his father. So there was
the black
nowadays. Go ahead.
It's funny that you said that because one of the things I was thinking about was how I believe our race is the only race where you can hear somebody say, "Oh, they too black." And I think what happened was people became afraid of being labeled too black, and they started dumbing it down or toning it down, and it got lost in a little bit of that.
That's what I was going to say.
Drugs incarcerating the black people at a higher rate as well.
It seems as though once a black person reaches a certain plateau, they want to disassociate themselves as being black. They want to all of a sudden take on the white image, or they want to be white. They don't, they don't want people to associate them with the black race. And in some ways, you sympathize with them because now, not all of us, but a big majority of the black race is the morals have dropped so low and then I always say, in my opinion, we're only as strong as our weakest link because America judges us by the least of us. And what certain blacks do now it's really giving us a bad image and a bad name. So black people at a higher level, they don't want to be associated as being black.
That's the problem. You are looking at how America judges you. That shouldn't matter one bit to you. You should worry about how you judge yourself. I mean, it doesn't matter. We don't care about their standards. We care about our standards. What it means to be black. I mean, they were the people that told us. They were the people that told us we came from Africa, where people were monkeys jumping up and living in jungles, etc., etc. It depends on it depends on what you think about yourself, not what they think. Who cares what they are thinking?
I really don't.
I think
I'm just saying in general, not too particular.
I think we got to work on repairing each individual household as a unit. Because I was having a conversation with one of my friends, and they was talking about how we view the Oscars as a more prestigious accomplishment than a BET award. And that's the problem. We're trying to fit into somebody else's deal instead of embrace what we already have. So until we can do that on an individual core where we start getting pride in our own thing, then we're going to continue to have that challenge and be defined by what the white people say, so to speak, because we're trying to assimilate to their deal.
And that's exactly what we need to be headed, is to get, if we're talking about telling our youth where they came from, what is in their history. And I'm talking not this whitewashed public school history that has been given to them. I'm talking about going back and actually giving them directly from what is a part of our culture. It's okay to do that. It's okay to embrace it. And I really believe that we need to begin to let the white culture, I'm not even going to say dominant anymore, because really they aren't dominant. By 2050, they become the minority. I think it's 2030 now. It's even, okay. So it's okay for us to let go of their system and their culture. That is perfectly fine and perfectly acceptable at this point in time. I think in order for black folk to survive, we have to do it at this time.
When you have blacks such as Magic Johnson opening up schools now in our community, eventually I think if we continue down that path, we will get our history and our culture back. But we have to be afforded the tools we need.
No, they're not gonna give you. That's what I think. That's where we are now. So we can't ask who, ask for what. They have all the resources they want to lock up. They're going to continue to lock up resources. No more asking. Those days are over. We recognize who we are, and I think at this point, it's a matter of just I'm not. Bless those who wanted to march yesterday, but I'm not going to go out and march for people who are just going to mock, the process. We need to turn around, look at ourselves, take our culture back, and get about our business.
I totally agree with that. I'm not about waiting for an opportunity. I'm about creating an opportunity, and I think that's what more of us need to do instead of waiting for a handout. We can't look to the establishment that enslaved us to give us all of the resources that we want.
They don't want to. They don't want to, and they're not going to.
When you say the establishment that enslaved us, are you talking white culture, or are you talking
your current establishment has no desire to change. This system does not desire change.
I want to clarify something. When you say the white system, you don't mean just your everyday white people. I mean, they're not. Right.
Because I know what I'm talking about
the fraternal brotherhood.
Well, if we could pull this back to culture, though, I mean, and it might suck, but we've just highlighted something that nationally, as a group, we can all identify with as part of our culture, no matter where you go, no matter who you are, no matter where you live in America. If you're black, you're having to deal with your community looking up to another community as the gold standard.
Yes.
So that is a part of, that in itself is a part of our culture. So that's something we have to come to terms with and change, and I think that change is going to start in the home, not in the classroom.
Which is the classroom.
And it is. And the shameless plug for the UR blog, I just wrote an article on why we are moving forward. You guys go check that out on the UR website. But where I talk about why marching nowadays is different from the marching we did in the 60s and the culture of the time and all those other things. I think personally, we need to, for one, our parents have to become teachers again. And our kids need to be students at home more than they're students in the classroom at school. Because in the school, they're going to get what we would say the system wants them to get, unless they go to boarding school or charter school or something like that. And even then, the curriculum, although it can be stretched, can still be controlled. You control what your child knows, and if you instill that pride in them at home, then that's a step forward. Two, I think we need to reconnect with our older generation. I'm a big fan of the theory that our grandparents have failed us for the simple fact that they lost connection with their children. Now you have parents, mothers, 20, 30 years old, raising kids, and the kids haven't talked to their grandparents. My own generation, you know, there's a gap between my mom's generation and her mom's generation where that knowledge base isn't being passed on to these would-be parents to teach them about their history and to teach them the benefits of teaching their kids history. So I think we have to reconnect with our elders and show them respect and stop looking at them as nasty, miserly, mean old people that we just want to get as far away from because they always offering us stale candy and they smell like mothballs. You know, so I think those are two big things for me, and I think they start on a small level. I got a bunch of other ideas, but I think if we start there, that'll be a moving point.
Okay.
I definitely agree on the point that we need to start with the education in the home. I think education at home is equally important as the education at school. I wouldn't say that one would be less than the other. I still say that the history component is extremely important, and I think that as a focal point, so to speak, or a group that's making a transition for the culture, I think it's important for us to establish like rites of passage or some type of tradition, because I feel like a lot of them has been lost. Like I was saying on the last call with the Jewish phenomenon, it was talking about how, you know, they have a ceremony for a guy when he turns a certain age where he goes into manhood, and they sitting down with him and say, you know, this is what's expected of you as a man. You got to take care of your family. You got to have a job. Whatever you itemize those things to be. And the same thing for the young women. You need to talk to them and say, this is how a young lady should act. This is what's expected of you at this particular age. And make a big deal out of it. Just like on the first day to school, you take your kid to the school, you jump up and down, you cheerlead them. Them going into adulthood is just as important. And we need to frown upon things that don't shine us in a positive light, like the rap music calling the women bitches and hoes all the time. That's unacceptable. If we can't respect our women, how can we expect anyone else to? We are the only race that just consistently devalue our women. You know, so we got to have a change where somebody say something that we don't like, then as a unit, we not supporting them, so they know that we for real, and that's not how you do things. And I think once we start having enough pride and we start doing some things like that, we can have some momentum. Another thing that I feel that is a huge problem is in the so-called bad neighborhoods, when the people go to college to get an education, then they want to move to a so-called good neighborhood. And every resource keeps leaving the community, it's going to continue to deteriorate. Somebody has to plant their flag and say, I'm going to take what I learned, bring it back home, and improve the home base.
Okay.
That's my soapbox.
I think I think a huge thing that that LT mentioned earlier was when you have a culture, there's one thing that you need, which is unity. I think that's really huge. And the way you get unity is that we all have something in common, and it's obviously that we're black, and you have to emphasize the importance of like knowing that don't be embarrassed because your skin is black. I mean, you have, in my generation, you have little kids being ashamed that their color of skin is black, and they say, I'm not black, I'm light skinned, or I'm not black, I'm Creole, etc. But I understand that it's a stigma right now with being black, but there's also a stigma with being Mexican right now. But you don't see the Mexicans touching themselves from their race. I mean, you hear everybody calling them illegals and everything.
I don't think it's a stigma with being black. I think it's more so what the media portray. I never felt bad about being black, and I like singing. Say it loud.
But there's other people. There's other people that are black and you wouldn't even hear it come out their mouth that they're black. They say I'm brown or I'm light skinned or I'm not with you. You know what I mean?
Didn't somebody else say that they were in the military? Who else in here? I thought I heard somebody say that. Patrick,
that was me.
You?
That was me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what branch were you in?
Air Force.
Okay, because I did Navy, and I can tell you that being black in the military, and from what I understand, Army is the same way. They let you know that you are not your culture. You are a part of that military culture, and you better stop trying to identify yourself as anything but whatever that culture is. And so after a while, I know for myself, I did 14 years, and after a while, you do start to kind of lose yourself, and you kind of have to put yourself in a place where you know who you are, but you don't speak on it, you don't identify, we're all one military, so you do kind of lose, and I'm not going to lie, they start to make you kind of hate yourself to a certain extent. You literally have to put it aside.
That's one
and
of
anybody
those
who's experienced that.
That's one of those when in Rome, do as the Romans do type deals. I mean,
exactly.
When you in the military, you preparing for conflict where you got to kind of get rid of those lines because you fighting for your life. So that's a little bit extreme, but you can take what you learned from that, as well as with fraternities and sororities, on how they break an individual down to build them back up. And that's exactly what we're going to have to do with our culture. We're going to have to break people down to bring them back up. Yeah. You're going to say, your skin black, but you're not a true until you go through this process. It's not, you can't just be identified just because of your skin. A black person holds themselves to a certain standard, and this is the standard that we have.
Well, to go on what she said, though, it's not like they're saying we're all one big happy family. I know at least for me, it wasn't. Like, it was like, we still got our good old boys, and you ain't one of them, but you ain't a nigga either. You a soldier, but you're just not a good old boy. So they still had their points where they let you know you weren't in the in crowd, but, you're a little bit above a civilian nigga, but you're still a nigga.
Yeah.
So it's real. So with that, how can you use some of that to redefine our culture? Because that's what we're trying to say is how we gonna redefine it.
It's what you just said, that you can break down that. Yes, are you breaking down the way we see how people go hard on trying to remind people of the symbols that, again, for anybody who's a Christian on here, knows that even if you're going to retain what you believe, there's still some things that you have to break down to understand, to build back up, to know why you do what you do, why you believe what you believe, and that's what we've come to with our black culture. We need to break our people down to make them see why they've been doing what they've been doing. Why do our youth get on Facebook now and take pictures of themselves in the mirror like it's the thing to do? That's the part of their culture now. Well, we need to show them why that does not build them up. We're going to have to remove these symbols, these things that have become a part of the culture now, take those symbols, shatter them, and then rebuild people back up into something more positive. Or something, not even want to say positive or negative, but something that works for us to move us forward.
I'll say positive.
I definitely say positive.
Or you can say positive or negative, but I don't want to judge it, because what I might think is positive, somebody else, that I definitely think is negative, but there may be some things that,
It doesn't matter. Whatever works. That's all that matters.
Right. Yeah. So far we got the family unit and history are the two big components in the communication or bridging the gap between the generations. How do we go about bridging the gap between the generations to help redefine our culture?
Well, I think one of the big problems with bridging the gap between the generations is it's becoming another part of our culture that, I mean, I was reading an article the other day. This lady was a grandma at 29, and I mean, I kid you not.
Wow.
You know, like, grandmothers are so young nowadays. And really, they don't have the information that we need because they haven't had the lives, the experience. So I think it comes to a point where you have to, our youth kind of look at the older old people, and I'm talking about 60 and above. They kind of look at them like they're a burden. You know, like it's almost like, will you just hurry up and die? You know, so we have to just change the way we think about our elders. We have to change the way we really communicate with our elders. My kids right now, if they don't say yes ma'am or yes sir, you know, they're liable to get punched in the mouth. You know, you have to instill a certain respect for people that have lived longer than you have, and that might, you know, I'm not saying all of them, but if you've been alive for 60, 70 years, there's a pretty good possibility that you know more about life than somebody that's been alive for 14 or 15 years. So we just have to instill that level of respect for our elders, and we have to stop being so sensitive. Elders have been old; they've been alive a long time. They don't have patience for foolishness, and if they're gonna tell you it, it's just gonna come out the way it is. But we're so sensitive nowadays that we don't want nobody to tell us like it is. We want them to coddle us, and we'll stop talking to Grandma for weeks because she told us the boy or girl we were so in love with was no good for us and we needed to leave. Well, she don't understand. She's just mad because blah, blah, blah. I ain't going to talk to her no more. You know, or even something simple like, you know, you choose to go to work right out of school instead of going to college, and you tell your grandma about it, and your grandma say, well, baby, that's just stupid. Now your feelings hurt. You don't want to talk to her no more. So, you know, we have to instill that level of respect for our elders, and then I think we need to develop some tougher skin insofar as being told the things that we need to hear, because it ain't going to come sugar-coated from your elders. It's going to come blunt raw. This is what it is.
I completely agree with that last statement, that the thicker skin, that we need to start being real. We need to get real with ourselves, stop lying to ourselves, stop thinking that because somebody critiqued us. And even, I'm going to say this, even some of the negative critiques coming outside of our community, I don't think it will hurt to listen to a certain extent to what other people say. Because I know we say, oh, I don't listen to haters. But sometimes a hater can show you a little something. You know, you can take what you need and purge the rest if you don't, you know, if it doesn't fit. But we do need to start taking a look at ourselves and being okay to evaluate what's going to be good for us and our culture and moving forward.
Good point.
I definitely think we had some good points in the conversation today. I think the big takeaways for me were, again, bridging the gap between the generations, because that's a huge missing link in my family, so I can relate to that personally. Definitely making the emphasis on the education at home, because a lot of parents today rely on the school to raise their kids. And then not only that, I think that we need to reestablish or establish the set form of customs, traditions, and standards, and definitely make the base having a tougher skin, because I argue about that a lot as well, talking about you can't be honest with a person because they go in the corner and cry, or they ain't never contemplating suicide because you gave it to them raw. Like, you fat, you need to work out. I say that you don't love me for me, I can love you all day, but you go die from high blood pressure, cholesterol, and obesity. You need to lose weight. You fat.
That's a little.
You know, so this is real.
But there
you
are
can't tell
some.
a person that they want you to say you husky or you big bone, and people just got to get tougher skin, receive the information, make some adjustments.
Yeah,
The truth shouldn't hurt.
comfort can kill you sometimes. Yep, little truth.
Mm-hmm. And I definitely agree that well, not agree, but I think that whole hey, what did you say? The hater thing. I think that is part of a trick or attack on us anyway. We're always talking about somebody a hater. You can't even receive the information. When somebody says something, you can always learn from somebody. You can learn from
unless it's a white voice behind it.
So I think we need to get rid of that hater mentality and just receive what people say. You could do an honest self-assessment to say, well, you know, maybe I ain't on top of my game. Maybe I can stand and improve, or maybe I am fat. You know, maybe I need to go and lose some weight. I can go on a diet or exercise or whatever the case may be. But as far as tying that back to the culture, we need to be able to receive criticism or critique and use that as a mechanism to improve.
Agree.
But at the same time, while you're giving criticism to other people, you must be doing the self-reflection on yourself. Just adding it in.
I hate that statement, man. I think that's a cop-out. That's the first thing that comes out of
I'm agreeing with you. But I'm saying that you need to as well do an honest self-reflection as well. I mean, you can critique others all you want, but you need.
Yeah, I say when I'm giving you, I'm listening to my own advice. Like, I'll state something and be like, this is advice to myself as well. I'm not just telling you.
That's better put, because a lot of people look for other things in other people rather than looking at themselves. But at the same time, you should be giving advice to them, but as well, you should be listening to your own advice, like LT put it.
I try not to focus on that at all, man, because I don't know who are really spiritual, but that might be your blessing being relayed to you, but you can't receive it. All you can think about is, how you gonna try to talk to me about getting my stuff together and you ain't got yours together? It's like you missing the whole point. You focusing on me. You can't even receive my message. You on defense mode. To just receive that could be the blessing that's for your life, but you on the blessing focusing on the wrong thing. It might not be that person's season who's giving you the message. It's just like you were saying with the older generation. Yeah, the older generation go tell you that's a stupid idea, but you can turn it on them. Well, what are you doing with your life? You asked me for $20 for this. So forget worrying about that other person receives a message, because that might be the blessing, but you miss it because you focusing on their imperfections.
But at the same time, you have to be able to accept criticism as well as give it. Because if everybody just deflect each criticism that's aimed at them, then people just gonna be talking all day and no one is gonna be listening.
That's what I'm saying. Don't reflect it, receive it. That person who criticized you definitely got a criticism coming their way. I try to correct anybody. If I see something wrong, I'm gonna correct it. And I'm my biggest critic. Everybody don't operate like that, but I mean, your peers should be holding you accountable and correct something when they see it wrong.
Well, that was a good conversation. I think we did come up with some points and some actual specific nuggets that people can pull out from that, as far as family, bridging the gap, and being able to do self-assessment. So I do think I think people will be able to take away something from this conversation, definitely.